So what are we gonna do today, Cousin BW?
The same thing we do every day, Melvin. Try to take over the neighborhood.
Hey y'all, Bloodwing here, back to bring some grumpiness to your internet. Before we get into the story we're going to look at today, I wanted to give a shout out to one of my subscribers, Nickus Be Like, and that's with 2 Q's, but he's the one that brought this story to my attention. I'm assuming it's a he. Hope I'm not misgendering you. But he posted it on the comment section yesterday. Told him I'd look at it. And says, hey BW, could you do a video on this story? It is from my school. So it's from his school, their school. And then gave the link. I told him I'd look at it and would probably, this was yesterday, and probably would not be then that I'd record it because you all know my situation. I'm often babysitting and can't record when I'm doing that. And I told him I was quickly running out of recording time. But I took a look at it. I think it's worth doing, worth taking a peek at. You know, we're all familiar with all the things that go on in our colleges and so forth today. Like the despicable, disgusting things going on at Wintergreen College, and there's, it's just one in a long line of events that have happened that have included disgusting behavior from so-called social justice warriors at the college, and it's got to the point that I'm afraid we're almost becoming numb to it because it just happens all the time, and we're just so not surprised anymore. But maybe we lose sight of the fact that it goes even deeper than the colleges, even to lower education facilities like a high school. And that's what we're going to take a look at today, an event that happened at this high school that we're going to take a peek at. So let's get into this thing, shall we? And of course, the link to the article is down below. The title of the article is High School Art Display, Burn in Hell, Trump. So, yeah, there's a picture of the art display. And you can see for yourself the things that are scrawled on it. And, let's read the article. A New York school district has launched an investigation into a student art show that included profane references to President Trump. The art show at Shen High School featured a dozen drawings of the president's face. Above the drawings was a sign that read, "Draw on me." On a nearby table was a box filled with markers. Let's just say the youngsters did not hold back. No, high school students, I wouldn't expect them to. They're still in that phase where they've got to be edgy. They've got to be controversial. They've got to be shocking. So, yeah, the fact that they wouldn't hold back on it would not be surprising. But what bothers me is that if you look back at that picture, you'll see it's almost, not almost, it's all predominantly. I didn't find any comments that weren't anti-Trump or anti-right or any of that. And what bothers me about that is, and we'll get into this more as the article goes along, is that it indicates that there's a huge push in this high school to be social justice-y, to hate Trump and to hate anything that might be right of center. And this shouldn't be pushed at a high school level. But let's look at a little more evidence. "Burn in hell, Trump," wrote one person. Another person scrawled the word "asswipe." One of my readers sent me a photograph of the art display. It says to click here to see the hateful rhetoric for yourself. I've already showed you the picture. I think it's horribly disrespectful, parent Erica McGowan told me. She said the art display inside a classroom reflected what she called the school district's glaring hypocrisy. They preach tolerance and no bullying and safe spaces and all that nonsense as long as you're not a conservative, she said. If somebody had put up pictures of Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, they would mow you down. Mrs. McGowan told me her son Peter was lectured about wearing an iconic "Make America Great Again" ball cap to school. They told him it was hate speech, she said. Peter told me the art display was awfully disgusting. It's hypocritical for the school to pledge tolerance and then allow photos of a sitting president to burn in hell, he said. Now, I'm all for free speech. And the comments on this don't bother me so much per se. I mean, I would expect it out of high school kids and college kids even, and so forth, to be edgy and to do things like this. I mean, what would you expect if you put the sign "Draw on Me" and provided some markers? Of course, you're going to get some objectionable things. But what does bother me is what Mrs. McGowan brings out here, is that it seems to be one-sided. Her son was told that it was hate speech for wearing a MAGA hat, which gives an indication of where this school sits. And she's absolutely right. Had it been pictures of Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, they likely would have mowed you down. Now, this bothers me for one big reason. High schools should not be politicized. I don't believe colleges should be politicized. They're places of learning. You're there to learn, not to become political, but to learn. You're not there to learn one politic or the other. I'm going to tell you a quick story that about myself that I think applies to this. I'm not a political person. I've told you that over and over again. I could give a crap about whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or where your politics lie. I don't care about that. I really don't. I'm not a political person myself. On the spectrum, I fall just right of center. However, it doesn't mean that I haven't been interested in things of a somewhat political nature. In high school, I majored in social studies. And when I went to school, that meant that not only did I study history and geography, but there was also politics, or civics classes is what we called them then. And you learned about how American politics worked. You learned some about world politics and how it worked, but you weren't pushed to the right or the left. You were taught from a neutral position. And one of the fondest memories I have of high school is that in the high school that I went to, they had, at that time, an event called LUNA, which stood for Little United Nations Assembly. And it was a big deal. If you were a part of it, you got to get out of all your classes every day for a week. You met in the gymnasium, which was set up like a little United Nations Assembly. And the governor of the state actually came and would kick it off with a speech and a hit of the gavel. And there's a humorous story of how I was interviewed on the radio during that, which I won't tell now. Maybe at another time. But in that little United Nations Assembly, which I took part of in that year, I was part of the delegation of Uganda. Now, if you know your history, you know that in the 70s, I went to junior high and high school during the 70s, graduated in 78. Little United Nations would have probably been late 76, 77, somewhere around in there. I was a junior. And if you know anything about your 70s history, you know that at that time, Uganda and its leader, Idi Amin, were public enemy number one. They were hated. But we, being naive high school students, we sent out communication. In those days, there weren't computers, so you couldn't just get on the internet and look it up. We sent letters to Uganda to seek information about their country. We wanted to learn about their country so we could do this United Nations thing as best we can. As part of it, those letters were intercepted. And me and the group that I was with of about 3 other students for that Ugandan delegation actually had to talk to the FBI. Now, I bring that up, and, at the time it was shocking, but as an adult now, I understand why they did that. Because they were public enemy, and number one, they wanted to know why we were trying to contact them. Because they were looked at as terrorists. And they quickly found out, it didn't last very long, they quickly found out we're just naive high school students trying to work on a project. The reason I bring that up is during that whole ordeal, neither the school nor the FBI tried to shut us up. Neither the school nor the FBI tried to push us toward either a left-leaning or right-leaning outlook on this whole political thing involving Uganda. And they were a huge hot button at the time. This was before political correctness became a big thing. We learned about being a Republican. We learned about being a Democrat. We learned about being right or left and how politics worked, but it was from a neutral position. We were not pushed to one side or the other, so we were able to make up our own minds. This is how I grew up. Then later came in political correctness. And one word and one phrase and one organization after another became taboo that you couldn't say, you couldn't talk about. And now, fast forward to 2017, and here we are. To where in a high school, it's acceptable to teach them to be left-leaning. And I would have just as much problem if they were pushing a right-leaning agenda. You should not be teaching these kids how they should think politically. You should be teaching them English. You should be teaching them proper social studies from a neutral point of view. You should be teaching them geography. You should be teaching them math. You should be teaching them foreign languages, perhaps, and all of the other things that should be part of high school, but not which side of the political spectrum that they're allowed to be on. This is what I take umbrage with. This is what ticks me off. And Peter is absolutely right in this article. It's hypocritical for the school to pledge tolerance, in safe spaces and all that stuff, and then allow photos of a sitting president to burn in hell. Let's go on with the article. But the Shenandoah Central School District said the art exhibit was never meant to include derogatory or profane messages about President Trump. Come on. There was a sign above the display that said, "Write on me," and markers provided. You cannot tell me this isn't what you expected. This is a school official at the school district doing a huge backpedaling because they were caught in what they're doing. That's the problem with political correctness and social justice. This is one of the reasons I fight against it. They think that they can get away with doing whatever they want, and they can say whatever they want. I'm a huge, huge free speech advocate. Go ahead, say what you want. I have very little limitations on that. Very little. Unless it causes harm, direct physical harm to someone, like if you're promoting pedophilia. That's a video for another day. But other than that, I have no restriction on it. As long as you're not hurting or directly advocating harm to someone or inciting violence directly to someone. Say what you want. But there will be consequences. People have a right to also respond. And these social justice warriors, such as the officials at this school, think that they can get away with this and not get caught. Well, they got caught. Now they're backpedaling. They had to know. They had to know. And this is within a high school. Where are the teachers? Where are the principals? Where are the school officials of any sort that should be there watching what goes on? You cannot tell me that some of the teachers there didn't see what was going on, let alone that they should have expected it, but you can't tell me they didn't see it. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if some of the teachers themselves are responsible for what's written on this display. Obviously can't prove that, but it wouldn't surprise me. This is what bothers me. A spokesman told me they believe someone vandalized the artwork with graffiti. They didn't vandalize it. They'd done exactly what the sign invited them to do. They wrote on it. This is not vandalism, folks. Never mind the man behind the curtain. Once we noticed this, it was immediately taken down, the spokesperson said. You have a different definition of immediately. It was obviously up long enough for, let's take a look at this picture. Look at all the comments. It had to be up for quite a while to get all those comments. And people took pictures of it. And you immediately took it down? I don't think so, Tim. More backpedaling. If that's true, why was there a sign posted above the artwork inviting students to write messages? And why was a box of markers left nearby? I agree. That's exactly the point I just made. And I reckon we will just have to wait for the school district to complete its investigation. Yeah, I could hardly wait to hear what that comes out to be. The art exhibit has drawn the ire of the New York-based Saratoga Conservative Chicks. Their group called the exhibit outrageous and unacceptable. And I agree only in that it's unacceptable that, good and well, they wouldn't allow the opposite to happen. And had it been Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, we'd probably have kids facing expulsion. I mean, I don't think I'm reaching too much here to say that. There are some pretty ugly things on those pictures. Marnie Messett told me it's all about hate speech and division and indoctrination. There's no place for that in the school. I completely agree. I got no problem with people hating President Trump. Not a huge fan of him myself, even though I'm willing to give him a chance to see what he can do. He's just a few months into his term, so you can't expect a whole lot at this point. But I thought he was an idiot before the election. I still think he's an idiot. But given what we were given to choose from, he was the best. And that's all I'll say about that at this point. So I got no problem with anybody voicing their opinion about it. But the opposite, you have to be fair. You have to also allow for the opposite to be voiced. If you're going to allow for this identity politics to occur in the school, you have to allow for the opposite opinion to be voiced. As far as we can tell, it was not. I agree that there's no place for that in the school. High school and college should not be politicized. It's very rampant in the colleges. You have college professors, for Pete's sake. There was a particular college professor that was pointed out that was perhaps responsible for what's going on at Wintergreen College. It started the whole ball rolling. These professors and these teachers in college and in high school should not be pushing their personal political rhetoric. Stick to what in my day we called the 3 R's: writing, reading, and arithmetic. Teach them the basic tools that they need to move forward in life in adulthood, but leave the politics out of it. You know, the kids will become political enough and have discussions enough on their own outside of the school. I mean, look at all the social media. They'll make up their own minds, but it doesn't belong inside of the school. Anyway, let's get back to the article. She said people are getting sick and tired of public schools disparaging the president. There is no doubt that there is an anti-Trump bias in the public schools, she said. The teachers are trying to force a liberal agenda on our kids. And like I said, I got no problem with them voicing outrage at Trump or their opinion at Trump. That does not bother me. But the fact that they may be right, that the teachers are forcing a liberal agenda on their children, that bothers me. If nothing else, the folks at Shen High School have demonstrated that indoctrination is indeed an art form. Pun intended there. And that's the end of the article. But the reason I wanted to point this out is this indoctrination, folks, goes deeper than what some of you may realize. And it may be even deeper than that. For all I know, it might even go all the way down to the junior highs and down to the grade schools. I don't know. Point is, folks, be aware of what the schools are teaching your kids. Be aware. Get involved in your kids' life. Be aware of what they're being taught. And if they're being politicized, and I don't care if it's to the left or to the right, put a stop to it. Have a talk with them. Go to your school district. Go to the officials at your school, the superintendent of your school district, or however far up you got to go to put a stop to this stuff. These schools are going to continue to do exactly this until we as parents and grandparents go to the schools and voice to them that it needs to stop. Things like at Wintergreen College would not happen if the parents of the children that go there stood up to the school administration and to the government, since it is publicly funded, that college is, which should be taken away, by the way. If the parents stood up and told them, stop the indoctrination, teach our kids the core of what they need to learn to get a job, to get by in life as a productive member of society in adulthood, but leave the indoctrination, leave the politics, leave the social justice out of it. And I honestly believe that if we all took a notion to stand up to it, we could maybe make a difference. I'm just wanting to put that little bug under your bonnet, that little voice in your ear there. If you have kids that are school age, please pay attention to what they're being taught. Please pay attention to what their schools are promoting and what they're pushing. So as far as I know, my grandchildren here that are going to school aren't being subjected to anything like this. And I try to keep an eye on everything that they bring home and what they learn. I've been involved with this. I've raised 3 kids. Years ago, there was a particular book, and I won't go into great detail, that we helped get taken out of the library because it was extremely social justice-y. And we're teaching kids of that age in elementary school things they didn't need to be learning. Now, I'm not for censorship or book burning. It just wasn't proper for that age group. High school, maybe, but it wasn't for elementary school kids. And the school district eventually agreed, because we stood up. Folks, be aware of what your kids are learning. They are being indoctrinated in many cases. They are being pushed to one indoctrination area or another, to the left or to the right. And mostly these days is to the left, because of political correctness. the right's voice has been silenced to the point where we can't even speak. And we're not giving equal platform in many cases. You have all these demonstrations that happen that have turned violent so often of recent. We had demonstrations in my day too. I mean, come on, it was the 60s and the 70s. We invented demonstrations. But very seldom did they turn violent. They had happened sometimes, and to a very regrettable and sad degree sometimes. Remember the 4 deaths in Ohio over a Vietnam demonstration that involved the National Guard. But for the most part, both sides were given equal voice and equal protection, and it did not turn violent like it's doing today. Folks, we got to stand up. Okay? We've got to stand up for what's right. And the politicizing of our children, regardless of which side of the political aisle you personally fall on, has no place in our schools, in our high schools or our college. It needs to stop. It's not what we send them there for. Is it? Anyway, thank you again for Nick is Be Like for the article. I'm going to end this video here. And as always, get out of my yard.